Hear me out. Maybe that bear wasn't just a bear. Maybe it was a test. Maybe it was Grandma.
The Spiritual Shitshow Podcast with Suzanne Soul, episode 29.
Hello, all you dreamy motherfuckers, and welcome to the Spiritual Shitshow Podcast, where we get into the dumpster fire the healing and spiritual awakening journey can be. I'm your host, Suzanne Soul, comedian, lifelong spiritual student, and I'm sharing some of the crap I've learned along my journey that has helped me, and that I hope helps you too. This is part 4 of my series about the ways Joseph Campbell, thanks to Bill Moyers of PBS, blew my fucking mind in the power of myth. And in this episode, I'm talking about the conversation, the first storytellers. In the beginning, there were stories and there were tellers. Not thing tellers, storytellers. In a time long ago, before we had Wi-Fi, antidepressants, and GPS, we were just cute, hairy meatbags with our precious existential dread, excellent cheekbones, and 0 neck humps, trying to survive a world full of volcanoes, animal attacks, glowing shit in the skies, and just trying to make sense of all the chaos. Disclaimer, we still kind of can't make sense of it, but back then we didn't have the illusion of control or 2-day shipping. We had to just actually sit with that fucking discomfort. And how did we do it? Myth, aka stories, aka stories around the campfire, aka rituals, aka ceremonies, aka art, and the art of storytelling. Campbell says a myth is a metaphor for a mystery beyond human comprehension. Whoa, I know. He's dropping truth bombs like that throughout. The first storytellers, those fabulous wild motherfuckers, sitting round a campfire tens of thousands of years before podcasts even existed, spinning tales to keep their friends and family from freaking the fuck out every time they saw lightning. At their core, the first storytellers were badass alchemists, transforming fear into courage, confusion into clarity, and random mammoth encounters into spiritual enlightenment. Huh? Not easy. These ancient storytellers understood something profound and deeply human, that life is messy, unpredictable, and frequently absurd. So we probably need to talk about it with poetry, metaphors, and some theatrical drama. Because from the very beginning, we humans have needed more than just food and shelter and mates who don't give us fleas. We needed meaning. We needed ways to make sense of our own aliveness, our own broken hearts, our own holy terror that all of this could just vanish tomorrow. So we told stories, not just to explain off-season weather, but to survive the weathering of our souls. Campbell says that the first function of mythology is to reconcile waking consciousness to the mystery of the universe. Translation: life is fucking terrifying sometimes, so let's help each other understand it better, so we don't kill the cave neighbors next door because they forgot to return our butter spear. I mean, life is a fucking mystery, and we can try all day and night to say what we think it is, but no one really knows absolutely. So let's be in awe of that, and yes, that'll make us all confused as fuck, but let's at least be confused together. And we can maybe throw in a cool animal story or a metaphor about the sun. And in Joseph Campbell's years of study, he looked at many of these ancient tales and said, holy crap. I mean, it's right there on the papyrus. All of us have been trying to figure out why we're here since all of us started trying to figure out why we're here. Imagine you're a caveman, no iPhone, no soy milk latte, no clue what the fuck thunder is. You're cold, hungry, and you just watched your buddy Greg fall into a ravine. You're trying to process this existential horror, but you live in ancient times before they introduced therapy and breathwork coaches. So you go into a cave and paint the fuck out of it. Antelopes, friends walking behind each other, mountains. Boom! The first art gallery, but it's not just a doodle. According to Campbell, it's ritual, it's meaning, it's your attempt to scream into the cosmic void and have it whisper back, yeah, I see you. And I'm really sorry about Greg. Cave paintings weren't just prehistoric animal and people stick figures. They were the original trauma dumps. Our ancestors were like, I nearly got eaten today, and I need to immortalize that in art. Us early humans were trying to figure out our chaotic thoughts and our primal urges, all while dodging saber-toothed tigers, figuring out how to cook mammoth meat without burning our eyebrows off, all while trying to make friends and connections without play dates and group therapy. Campbell says the ancient myths were designed to put the mind in accord with the body and the way of life in accord with the way nature dictates. So, some prehistoric humans are sitting around the fire, probably naked, possibly hungry, definitely unwashed, and suddenly somebody stands up and says, You guys, hear me out. Once upon a time, and that was the first storyteller. I'm kidding, but it would be cool if it was as dramatic as that. And maybe at first people were like, she totally just made that shit up. But maybe she kept telling it anyway because she believed she could, so she did. And eventually that story went viral. Or maybe they were into it right away and were like, Pam, I understand so much about life now and how we're all a part of something bigger than ourselves and how incredible that all is. And I tell you this much, I'm going to sleep like a baby on my sleeping rock tonight. But who knows? I don't know because I wasn't there, as far as I know. Or maybe I was. Like Joseph Campbell, I try to respect the mystery of it all. Now, Campbell made it a point to explain that the myths and these first stories were not about facts. Myth is about diving into the marrow of humanity. Myths are the stories we told to stop ourselves from running off screaming into the abyss. Myths aren't literal truths, but rather poetry, a metaphorical language. Myths were never meant to be taken literally, and when we force them into that box, when we make them rigid or dogmatic or demand they explain the world like a science textbook, we kill their power to give us meaning. Because myth isn't supposed to be a conclusion. It's supposed to be an invitation, babe. An invitation to feel, to transform. The first stories weren't about facts. They weren't about journalism like, this just didn't. Lucy was picking up sticks like any other day when she caught a saber-toothed tiger in the rib. She is in critical condition at the fire pit next door. More on her condition after these announcements from the makers of tools. It wasn't a TED Talk on survival strategies. 9 things I do to get my husband to stop killing every guy who throws me a bone. Myth is a wild metaphor about a wolf with 7 eyes that lives inside of a mountain and cries moonlight. And somehow, everyone felt a little safer after hearing it. Because as Joseph Campbell so beautifully says in this episode, myths are clues to the spiritual potentialities of the human life. The first stories were incredible, filled with adventures, symbolism, and often laden with some deeply weird and wild shit like one of those dreams you have when you fall asleep on the bus. And in the first storytellers, Campbell invites us back to sit around the fire, to the circle, to the place where metaphor was medicine. Storytelling wasn't just for entertainment, it was how people made sense of grief, how they passed on values, how they taught their children not to eat the wrong berries, or marry the trickster spirit that lives in the woods, unless that was part of their path, of course. Think about that. He's not saying myths are nice distractions. He's saying myths are how we remember who we are at the deepest level of our being. He's saying myths show us how we can metabolize terror into beauty. So now you might be like, what even made people think to take part in this kind of storytelling? Well, maybe somewhere along the way, possibly right after a near-death encounter with a cranky woolly mammoth, one of the early humans said, wait a minute, what if? Now go with me on this, Jane. What if the stars aren't just rocks in the sky? What if they're all of our ancestors watching us? What if the wind is a message from God? What if that giant mammoth that almost killed me was actually a spirit guide, just giving me some tough love to try to remind me to let someone know when I'm going out rock hunting? And Jane was like, Jerry, did you get in the plant residue again? The first storytellers were telling stories long before they started being etched into stone. And were there themes across all cultures and time zone? Why, what a great question. Fuck yes, there were. Birth, death, sex, the weather, God, shame, redemption, bad decisions, scary animals, resurrection, and the meaning of it all. And what's wild and kind of magical is that stories across continents have similarities to each other. Different lands, different gods, but somehow the same archetypes and themes keep showing up. You remember archetypes from the episode I did called Act a Fool, where I glossed over an explanation about archetypes? It's like we all have types within us, like the trickster, the hero, the wise one, the disco queen, JK. But that would be amazeballs. I mean, amaze disco balls. And many myths have similar themes, like the journey into the dark forest, the impossible choice, death, and rebirth. You see it in Norse myths, Navajo stories, African cosmologies, Polynesian sea legends, Greek epics. Joseph Campbell called this the monomyth, but I like to call it same shit, different motherfuckers. These similar themes were seen all over the world in many, many cultures. It seems humans kept telling the same kinds of stories. It's like all of humanity got handed the same cosmic prompt. Make this shit make sense. And we did, and we still do. And these people weren't slick authors or fancy motherfuckers with publishing deals. These were wild-eyed, dirt-covered humans standing around a fire saying, "Hear me out. Maybe that bear wasn't just a bear. Maybe it was a test. Maybe it was grandma." It wasn't about facts. It was about something more. It was about story that feeds the soul. Because deep down, humanity keeps hitting the same questions. Why am I here? What the fuck is going on? Is that thunder, or is God pissed off again? Take the Native American tribes, for example. Campbell quotes Black Elk, who eloquently said, "The center of the world is everywhere," which could be interpreted in a big picture way, as in, everything everywhere in this world is where the great spirit or God or source of life is and is always creating, as well as in an experiential way. Like, we experience the center of everything wherever we are because we are the ones experiencing the world, and our experience comes from ourselves and our own interpretation on life, aka wherever you go, there you are. Campbell noted that rituals, stories, and myths helped the early humans cope with the harsh realities of life and death. So when someone died, instead of just being really fucked up, they'd perform elaborate ceremonies, perhaps involving interpretive dance and theatrical fashion. They helped us wrap our arms around grief and not completely lose our fucking minds when our loved ones wandered off into the dark and never came back. Campbell believed that the psychologizing of myth, aka looking at the stories to understand the meaning they provided, is one of the glories of the modern age. Because now we get to realize those old stories weren't about literal gods or monsters. They were about our inner lives: depression, doubt, love, growth, value. Those were the beasts, and they still are. As Campbell says in another episode, the dragon is within you. Modern life has modern answers, but doesn't seem to have a lot of myth. You have anxiety? Take this pill. Lost your sense of meaning? Buy a $400 yoga retreat. Want to feel transformed? Try CrossFit. And while all those things can be helpful, we also need more shared rites, symbolic deaths and rebirths, not just a slow, constant buzzing hum of, "Am I doing this right?" and no myth to answer it. Campbell believed in the 1980s that the majority of us not looking to the myths and rituals for wisdom was leading to chaos. And I think we feel that in our bones, in our browser history, in the fact that most people today experience major life transitions: sex, death, grief, parenthood. Some folks with not even the support you would find in a soggy pamphlet. No wonder we all kind of feel crazy sometimes. So, when we tell our stories about our journeys, we are recalibrating our souls. We're saying, here's what I saw in the dark. It scared the shit out of me, but I came back. And you can too. That's what Campbell's laying down in this episode. It's a reminder. Your inner chaos is part of the story, always has been. There's no wrong way to feel lost. The myth is the map, and the story's the flashlight. Our modern obsession with facts and logic and certainty can leave our souls feeling unnourished. So, when the first storytellers sat around the fire and said, "The sun was born from the mouth of a lion," or "The river is a goddess who takes what she needs," they understood something we've forgotten. Reality can be experienced in a more meaningful way when you mythologize it. So, these rituals were the schooling of the imagination. Speaking of education, in the ancient times, your education came via a terrifying solo trip into a cave filled with bison art, not a class field trip to the science museum where you get to make out in the back of the bus on the way home with your 8th grade crush. Campbell said these are initiation sanctuaries, meaning you didn't go in for a self-guided tour with Bluetooth headphones and surveillance cameras. You went in to metaphorically die to your child self and come out as a grown-ass motherfucker. Picture a bunch of adults saying, "Happy 13th birthday, now go crawl 200 feet into that hole in the earth by yourself." Kids were taken into pitch black holes in the earth and told, "Crawl until you see God or pass out. Either way, you're an adult when you come out, if you come out." And the inner walls of the caves were filled with paintings of giant beasts, humans with animal heads, all kinds of scary looking shit. And this was how they learned about life. It wasn't just about fear, though. It was about transformation. You'd walk in a child, you'd walk out changed, baptized by darkness, images, sound, your own fear. The ritual acting as a myth in motion. Today's version of a rite of passage is failing your driver's test or trying coffee for the first time. But back then, just a dark cave, and you and your brainsies. Shamans were some of the first storytellers, as they have already gone on a journey of transformation. The shaman is a spiritually minded person who goes into meditations and takes part in rituals to experience the spirit world. Sees some freaky shit, comes back, and instead of crying or calling the police, they tell you what life means. They've gone to the edge of human consciousness, seen dudes with antlers, birds made of fire, and brought back fables to help people get through shit. That's what makes them great storytellers. They know how to crack open the world of the mind, peek behind the veil, and come back without completely losing their shit for good. They tell stories of the spirit who took your loved one to another realm. They sing it, they paint it on a wall, they ritualize it. So your grief becomes part of something bigger, and your heart can keep beating with love. Campbell says the shaman has been psychologically shattered and put back together again. And I was like, oh, me too. But I just call it living through a lifetime of rejection. But saying psychologically shattered is more dramatic, and I like that. Shamans are brave enough to lose their minds on purpose, in service to the tribe. And when they come back, ooh, girl, they have stories that explain why your uncle disappeared in the woods or why stars blink. And like the shaman, when we go inward into the essence of our spiritual nature, into the in-between spaces of ourselves, which is what we may do when we meditate or cry in the bathtub or make art or take in art that guts us. We go in, we retrieve meaning, and we come back with a story. And that's a storyteller. Someone who's been to hell and made it funny. Campbell's got this reverence for them, like they're part wizard, part therapist, part cosmic stand-up. They go into the dark and they come back with meaning. And sometimes it is funny. We need myths and metaphors to speak to that deeper part of us. Because as Campbell says, the mind can ramble off in strange ways and want things the body does not want. And myths are how we get the mind and body to sit down at the same table. Speaking of sitting down at the table, one of the other rituals Campbell talks about in the First Storytellers is about the ritual of killing and eating. If you spear a deer, don't just drag it home like a caveman DoorDash delivery. Honor it. Sing. Dance. Give thanks. And not just in a cool, dinner's ready way. More like a holy shit, we took a life. Something died so we could live. Let's not pretend that's not totes sacred because it is. Campbell calls this mystic participation, which means you're in the story with the animal, with nature, with death itself. You're not above it, you're in it. And you're with it. You are participating in the giant cosmic cycle, and the ritual hunt isn't just about food. It is a sacred drama. The animal is a messenger of the divine. So the hunters would undergo a psychological transformation. These rituals don't just feed the belly, they feed the soul. What I like about what Campbell is sharing is that it's not about being in denial about the brutality of killing and eating. Cultures who take part in a ritual practice of hunting are living honestly about the whole ordeal. And you have to respect that. They are living in reality with honor and care. Because it feels so easy to watch a documentary about indigenous people hunting and then eating their kill and being like, gross, that is barbaric. But many of us meat-eating folks do the same thing, except we may do it with a bit of denial about how that steak got onto our plate. Joseph Campbell says that indigenous cultures have a regard for the animal as a vow. He says that once you see the animal as a vow, you give it great appreciation for having given its life for you to live. Now, many people are against the eating of animals, and I appreciate that stance, especially with factory farming and how we are all allowing animals in our world to be treated, not as vows, but as its. But for those of us who do eat meat, which do you think is more barbaric? People hunting wild animals who are living free on the earth and then eating the one animal they killed together, and before eating, facilitating ceremonies of gratitude and appreciation to the animal, revering its life, the life given to it by the Great Spirit with a ritual or ceremony, or locking an animal in a stockade its entire life, where many animals live a life of absolute hell and torture, and then killing it, sometimes in a way that causes the animal great suffering, and then cutting it up and putting pieces of it on styrofoam plates, wrapping each piece in plastic, and then we mindlessly go to the store and pay too much money for it. Sorry, I know it's gross, but this is an example of what Campbell says happens when we move from seeing an animal as a vow to be honored and appreciated to an it, where it isn't even seen as a living being. So I just thought that was poignant. Now back to our regularly scheduled programming. Early humans intuitively grasped a simple truth. The metaphors, magic, and meaning of storytelling was medicine. Moyers says, the stories are to him like messages in a bottle from shores someone else has visited first, and they tell him how others have made the passage and how he can make the passage. The wisdom Campbell gives us in the First Storytellers is that story is sacred, metaphor is holy, and being human is hard as fuck, but it's a little less hard when you've got a myth to help you out. And here's what I love most. He's not romanticizing myth. He's reminding us that this ancient impulse to tell stories is still alive in us today. Every time we journal or make art or write about our journey or cry to a song that somehow understands us better than our therapist, we are reaching back to that same fire. The myths connect us with being alive, put us in touch with the idea that we're a part of the great mystery, help us see that we're all connected by our humanity and the spark of life within us, and help us understand that birth and death and the ebb and flow of life is inevitable, and how Campbell says we must go with it. He said, I live with these myths, and they tell me to do this all the time. He said that what helped him go with the flow of life is, I simply identify with the Christ in me. Campbell tells us to ask ourselves, Am I the bulb that carries the light, or am I the light of which the bulb is the vehicle? And the myths help us identify with the light, aka consciousness, helping us move through the changes of life. He says, when you identify with the Christ in you, the Christ in you doesn't die. The Christ in you survives death and resurrects. Or it can be with Shiva. I am Shiva. And this is the great meditation of the yogis in the Himalayas. And one doesn't even have to have a metaphorical image like that. If one has a mind that's willing to just relax and identify itself with that which moves it. Campbell seems to be telling us that the sacred is in the surrender. It's the practice of saying, fuck it. Let's flow with the mystery, babe. Even if the mystery just moved you to cry in the cereal aisle at the grocery store when they played Penny Lovers by Lionel Richie. So, when we forget about the myth, metaphors, and the meaning stories can provide, we start mistaking the surface for the soul. We think the point is to be successful, hot, busy, and while all those things are fun, we forget that life is meant to be experienced, not just optimized. But Campbell is inviting us back in. He's saying you still have access to these stories. They're in you. You're still the hero. You're still on the journey, even if your cave is a studio apartment and your ritual is surviving one more fucking Monday. But what's super groovy is that Campbell's saying, hey boo, guess what? You're the storyteller now. And I'm like, cool. I like telling stories. And we're doing it, even though we might not know it. We might not be painting on cave walls, but we're sharing our stories on podcasts, blogs, and social media. We're trying to make sense of our own shit shows, just like our ancestors did. You don't have to live in a cave or kill a buffalo. Just be willing to go into your own darkness and come back with something true to share. So maybe we're all shamans crawling through our metaphorical caves of addiction, heartbreak, cancer, menopause, internet search rabbit holes, and we all have something to share. A story, a map, a myth. The myth is still breathing, and the ritual hasn't left us. It's just been hiding in plain sight. The depression you went through after that breakup. The prayer you mumbled through gritted teeth. The moment you said, fuck it, and chose to love again. That's your cave. That's your ritual. And it matters. And if your path feels weird, good. Weird is the soul's native language. If your heart feels broken, it's okay. That means it's open. And if your story doesn't have a neat ending, congratulations. Neither does myth, because myth is still being written. And you, yes, you sobbing in your car while drinking a smoothie, are a story in progress too. So next time you're feeling overwhelmed by the chaos of life, remember that you are a part of a long tradition of storytellers. Embrace the mess, find the meaning in it, and share your story. Because as Campbell reminds us, it's through storytelling that we find meaning and connection. And I don't know about you, but I'm gonna keep telling my story through laughter, tears, and long-ass monologues like this one. Because the world needs more sacred shit shows. And if Joseph Campbell were here, I'd like to think he'd say, all right then, tell your story. So I will. And I hope you will too. I am loving this conversation about the power of myth. And there's more to come, of course. This has been the Spiritual Shit Show podcast. My name is Suzanne Soul. Thank you so motherfucking much for joining me. And I'll see you on the next one. You know what would be a great ending to this story? If you would fucking roll it.